You are tuning into Culture Crush with Kendra Maples. This podcast will dive into a variety of companies that are crushing it with a great company culture.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Culture Crush. On this podcast, we focus on everything surrounding businesses, growing a great company culture. We talk with company leaders to learn about real-life experiences, tips, and best practices for creating a healthy work environment. This particular series is a little different. This series focuses on coaches and consultants. So we had so many different resources resources that help companies with improving their company culture, but a lot of that was the coaches and the consultants that are out there. So we decided to do an entire series just focusing on coaches and consultants. Now, the fun part about this is, yes, there's a lot of coaches out there. There's a lot of consultants out there. A lot of them focusing on company culture, right? I don't want to bring in just anybody on this show. So when we're bringing in coaches and we're bringing in consultants, we're bringing the ones that have more of that unique twist, right? Maybe their background, how they got to where they are, maybe in the way that they support company culture, but there's always going to be a unique twist. And today, the gentleman that we have on has my favorite unique twist because I have a little bit of it too, which is fun. So let's get started. So without further ado, today our coach that we are focusing on is Rick Schwartz. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I am so excited to have you. You and I have known each other for a little while, for quite a while.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited to be part of your journey of becoming a coach, because I've taken some of the stuff that I've learned from previous roles, and I've used that when it comes to building a team and working with growing culture in a company. And people are probably listening going, what is so unique about this guy? So I do have a little blurb. I'm going to read just a little bit, but really, I want to hear it from you. I don't want them to hear it from me. I want them to hear it from you. So
Fair enough.
I'll read a quick thing. It just says, Rick Schwartz is a certified life coach, podcast host, and has a deep fascination with human and animal behavior. Rick's formal education in animal science and animal behavior set the foundation for him working closely with people and animals for the last 3 decades. So with that being said, let's hear from you. Tell us a little bit about you as a coach and the unique piece of why I brought you into this mix, because you're not a normal coach with your background.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I'm not a normal coach. I don't want to be a normal coach, and I don't think I am. Yeah, no, like you mentioned, my whole background and formal education is in animal behavior and animal sciences, and I've spent the majority of my life working with animals, but because of that, working with people as well. And I've always had a very strong passion for communicating my love and understanding of wildlife and animals to other people who maybe think, oh, that's cool, but then they don't know perhaps the unique aspects and different things about the individual animal or what's going on in their life. And so I really found myself in a position where I started to focus heavily on understanding people. I wanted to understand, how can I best reach them with the information I want? And so I kind of shifted from observing and understanding animals so I could work with them in the best possible way and take care of them in the best possible way, to now looking at understanding people. And I want to understand the soccer mom. I want to understand the grandparents. I want to understand the 6-year-old, and really find ways to reach them through that understanding and make that connection with them. And as I started moving forward with sort of that process, I started looking around at some of my coworkers and other people doing the same work I was doing, and realizing that they're really good at understanding animals and spending time really looking at what's going to make them tick, what's going to be reinforcing, what's going to work for them. But when it came to interacting with people, they just assumed all people were the same and that all people were like them. And so I started then focus on, how can I mentor other people in this, world of communication and wanting to make sure we reach the right people with the right information. And so it's from that. It's from my passion and love for working with animals and wildlife, and my passion and love of connecting people to animals, wildlife, and nature, that I started to realize deep in me was a stronger passion of really supporting, mentoring, and coaching people in that capacity. Fast forward several years, I find myself as a part-time faculty member at a college, and I start mentoring students as they transition from college to career. For myself, I had a very supportive family, and that was an easy transition. I had support. I had an older sibling to help, kind of like, okay, that's how he did it. This is how I'm going to do it. But I find there are a lot of students out there, a lot of young adults who unfortunately don't have that kind of support from home, don't come from an environment where it's been done before in their family. Maybe they have a supportive family, but no one knows that path yet from their family. So being able to mentor them as they transition from college life to career was really rewarding. And again, it came from taking that perspective of shifting away from who and what I am and what I do, and get an understanding of the individual, an understanding where they are, and then where they want to go, and how do we create that map for them, that path for them, that they can be accountable for, that they can put in those action steps, that they can see that path clearly that they've never forged before. And then the other side of it, we started stepping into the pandemic, and a lot of companies started offering early retirements. And so I had some peers in the world that I work in contact me and say, hey, I'm thinking of doing this early retirement thing, but I'm not sure. And so I found myself then in the middle of the pandemic mentoring several people transitioning from career to retirement. And in that moment, in that process, I was like, this light bulb just went off. Like, I love supporting people in this way, and decided that it's time to get serious about it. I've mentored for a long time. I've been consulting for a long time, but I wanted to really get certified as a coach. And so that was kind of my path, in the sense of it's all based in my knowledge and studies of animal behavior. But here's the key thing. Humans are animals. We're complex. We have so many other things that come into our lives that influence us. We have this fun barrier, and I call it a barrier sometimes, language, in that when I'm working with an animal that it doesn't speak English, of course, they as long as you understand the body language and the fundamentals, they don't lie. They're not going to cover up how they're feeling. They're not going to say, no, I'm good. I can handle this. They're not going to, buckle down to prove a point. They are who they are. When it comes to humans with language, we like to sometimes front a little bit with whether it's ego or fear or whatever's causing it. We can say we're fine. We can say we're good. We can say whatever version that we want to front with, but what's really happening sometimes takes a little more time to get down to. But overall, honestly, everything I've learned from working with a wide variety of birds and mammals and reptiles and people then across these years, I can use as my foundation. And I do use as my foundation when I go into an environment of either working one-on-one as a coach, or even stepping into a corporation and from a consulting standpoint, because what are corporations made up of? They're made up of people. And so a culture of the corporation is people-based. It's behavior-based. The activities and what's going on, people, behavior-based. It's all found fundamentally. The foundation of it is the same. It's a matter of then understanding the individuals to plug all that in.
But like you said, if you can understand people at the root of just being animals. I'm having the same conversation with my stepdaughter right now, because she'll say something, but she says it with a little extra attitude. And it's like, did you really mean that?
Right.
She's like, well, that's what I said. And it's like, that's not what you meant. And so truly understanding people at the root as, they're animals. What is their behavior? We were talking about this before. When you're working with people as animals, right? It's the same stuff that you and I did with working with animals, right? It's the consistency of behaviors and trainings. It's positive reinforcement. It's being clear when you communicate. It's all of these things. And that's why I was so excited for you to come on, because I have that similar I had that similar transition from animals to people.
Mhm.
And folks ask me all the time. My team just asked me over the weekend, we were at a team bonding and they're like, wait, so how did you go from being in Churchill with polar bears and studying them in the tundra, and then now you're here with us? Like, and I'm like, yeah, you guys are the same as polar bears.
Same as polar bears, a little bit smaller, pretty much the same.
Right? I feed you, you're happy. I give you snacks and meetings, you're good.
Yeah, and that, and I want to bring up one thing you said that gets tossed around a lot, actually, when we talk about corporate training and when we talk with management and C-suite people looking at how to strengthen their relationships and the culture in general. From that aspect, we talk about positive reinforcement. I cannot tell you how many times the general assumption is the positive reinforcement is the same across the board for everybody on the team. And again, coming from working with the animal world, even, you can have 6 of the same species that you're working with, and over here 4 of a different species, and you're gonna know, obviously, well, what's reinforcing for these 6 won't be reinforcing for those 4. They're different species. When it comes to people, though, we think they're all the same, whatever, just this. Even within that group of 6 that you're starting with here and that group of 4 over here, even within that group of the same species, each individual will have something different that is going to be most reinforcing for them. They are individuals. And that's where it seems the ball seems to get dropped real quick when it comes to people, is recognizing, yes, you have a team, you have a group, you have people that work for you, but they are individuals, and you must have an understanding of each individual to really make an impact then on that positive reinforcement or anything else that you might be trying to do within your organization.
Yeah. When you are coaching a leader that maybe has a team and you're walking through this conversation with them, do you bring in those examples of animals that you've worked with and like, here's these 5 baboons or whatever, parrots, right? Because like you said, some are food motivated, some are motivated just by the attention that you're giving them.
Right.
Do you tie all of that in?
Yes, I will bring in my experience as an example. However, to be the most effective I can be as a coach, whether I'm coaching an individual about just in general, in sort of the life 101 personal coaching or professional coaching or even corporate coaching at this level that we're talking about now, I do bring in some of my stories to show that example. However, it's really my goal to understand my client. So as much as I'm talking about our clients have to understand their people or any of that, I work very hard to get to know and understand my clients. So when I draw an analogy that's trying to prove a point or give them an aha moment, I want it to connect with them. So maybe they're a football fan, so I want to start talking about then the makeup of how the quarterback is going to be a different role and different position, different things are rewarding for them than your lineman, or your receiver. So yes, I will use a lot of my animals' background stories if I feel they're connecting with that individual to kind of show that story. But I also recognize that sometimes that doesn't land with everybody. So I really want to get to understand them and make sure that what I'm communicating to them lands to make the biggest impact.
Gotcha. Okay. And with you coaching, actually, let me step back a second. With this particular series, we focus on coaches and consultants. Right. So in the very beginning, I asked, what bucket do you fit in? And you said you fit into both buckets. So I'm curious to hear, for our audience, our community, because this comes up a lot, what is the difference between a coach and a consultant when you're helping somebody as a coach versus when you're helping somebody as a consultant? What does that look like?
On the surface, you can say there's a lot of similarities. Okay. It's a matter of what your end goal is. So the skills I pull on are very similar. When it comes to consulting, I'll sit down usually with the group of leaders of that organization. So I've consulted with small businesses. I've consulted with very large organizations. Sometimes it's sit down with the C-suite. Sometimes it's the one person from the C-suite introduces me to their director and VP level. Excuse me. The director and VP level. Excuse me. And we'll go from there. And the goal there then is to really get a strong understanding of what their goals are as a corporation, what their culture is, and what they're dealing with, and where, again, the surface level though of where are they versus where they want to be. And so a lot of times when I'm hired as a consultant, it is, hey, we have this problem where we don't know how to address it. We've tried this, we've tried that, it doesn't work, so now we come to you. Or it's, hey, we want to be better at this and we feel you can help steer us in that direction. What can we do? Either one of those scenarios, it is where they are versus where they want to be. And so it's usually a process of working with that management team, that leadership team, and understanding all the steps in which they need to go to get to where they want to be. Now, when it comes to coaching one-on-one, whether I'm coaching the director of an organization or a team, or whether I'm coaching, somebody who's just feels their life is out of balance, that's a big part of what so when I got certified as a coach, I got certified in the life balance side of things, because that was where I really felt that I had learned as a mentor for college students and learned as a mentor for those who were transitioning to retirement, that it is about personal balance. It's about checking all key areas of your life to make sure you're paying attention to everything. The analogy of spinning plates, if you can spin 6 or 7 plates, if you only really focus on spinning the financial one, you're going to lose a couple of the others. They're going to get wobbly and fall. But you can get that financial one spinning and then go over and spin those others real quick and come back and still address this one and maintain it. But you have to be thoughtful in that. So as a coach, again, whether I'm coaching a corporate head or a middle management or just somebody who's looking to get their life back in balance, the big thing is getting to know, where are they right now? What was it that made you reach out to me right now? And we really try to figure out what are that individual's issues and pain points that they're dealing with. Where are they now in life versus where they want to be? And in both cases, a big component is finding out, how did you get to where you are now? Have you always had your eyes on where you want to be, but you just got way off course? And this is corporate consulting or coaching. Yeah. And then if so, what caused this deviation? How do we go back and dig back a little bit, find that out? That's not always the case. Sometimes it's just they never had the tools or skills in place to get to where they want to be. Or the pandemic made them realize the life I'm living right now is not the life I want anymore. How do I change things? I know I want to change. I just don't know how to change. And again, a pandemic reference, corporations right now dealing with the great resignation. And it's not so much they have done something so much as the culture of our society has changed. And so now it's like, okay, well, we've always done this, and now it's not working. So help us figure out what we need to change so we can get back to what's working. So again, overall, the concept is, I guess you could say, the formula for both is very similar. The process, though, is different in the sense of how you are working through that consultation with that organization or business versus then how you are working through that personal development with that individual as a coach.
And then that whole process, you've mentioned individuals, you've mentioned teams, that whole process is going to look different, right? If you're one-on-one with somebody versus, do you do coaching with entire teams too?
Yeah, if that is what's deemed necessary, I will do that. Absolutely. And so here's another example of the difference. So if I'm working with an individual, I'm going to focus on 7 key areas of their life. That is what our first 7 sessions are, each one of these. Okay. So we're going to focus on fitness right off the bat. And now people think fitness, it's just, I got to get a gym membership. No, it's like, I want to know, are you sleeping well? Are you feeding yourself properly? Are you hydrated? Are you moving your body once a day? That's what I'm talking about, fitness. And unless your fitness goal is to be the next Mr. Universe, then sure, we can work on that too. But we talk about fitness. We talk about finance because it's a huge stressor in general for everybody, is finances. We talk about family because sometimes that can be very supportive or also a damaging area of your history. We talk about your career or your field. We talk about your faith, and whatever it may be to you as an individual. Everyone is different. And some people are like, nope, I don't believe it. We still talk about it though, because we need to make sure we're really minding this part of our life. Friends is the next one, and fun is the last one. Those 7 key areas are what I focus on for individuals. When it comes to corporations and consulting a corporation, we talk about the individuals on the team that make up the company. We talk about culture. Where did it come from? Is it serving us properly as an organization? We do talk about then how do we work with people in a team setting, but also recognize our individuals. And again, if you want to use an analogy for sports, you don't send your quarterback to go on the defense to cover a receiver. They don't run. They don't have that skill, and if you don't listen or understand football, it'd be the same as saying you're going to put your catcher in as the pitcher for baseball.
Yeah.
It wouldn't make sense. That's not where their skills are. So you have to manage your team, but you have to manage your individuals as well. And so again, it's a basic formula that's similar, but where the focus goes into individual versus consulting is different that way.
Huh. Okay. How interesting. I also think it's funny that you are an animal guy, but you use sports analogy.
Because that plays more into what our culture understands.
Yeah.
So again, people say that you're not the first to say that, where it's like, well, you're such an animal guy. Why do you use sports analogy or use this analogy? Because most of the time I try to ask, what I want to know what's going to make sense to the person that I'm speaking to. And sports is one of the number one things in our nation, men or women. And it's one of those things where I've had to learn more about other sports because I want to make sure I'm connecting with my person using the proper analogies. But yeah, if I'm talking to someone who comes from the animal world, I would totally use the troop dynamics of a gorilla to explain that, instead of a football or baseball team, because it's in my head that all works. It's all the same. But I know for everyone listening, like they don't understand the troop dynamics of a gorilla, so why would I use that analogy? So it's just a matter of trying to reach the broadest audience possible to get an understanding.
Yeah, but it shows that you're good at what you do. You've made that kind of that transition from animals to people. You're taking your knowledge and you're utilizing it to connect with people in the right way. So the football sports analogy makes sense, like you said.
Well, yeah, and that goes back to working with animals and communicating with people. When people would ask about different things about the animals, I would try to get an understanding. They're wearing a baseball shirt, then, hey, what's your favorite? You watch baseball. Okay, so, well, this animal's role in their ecosystem is similar to what your second baseman would have to do, So again, it goes back to my initial trying to figure people out and how can I really get them to understand, what I was passionate about, which is understanding those animals.
I love it. I mean, I'm the animal nerd too, so I love it, of course. So I want to transition a little bit because one of the main things that we are focusing on with this series in particular is having a tangible takeaway. So all of the other shows that we do, we focus on resources, company leaders. Obviously, there's takeaways in those podcasts, in those conversations. But with this one, we're very strategic about, we want to be able to say to our listeners, hey, listen to this episode, and this is the advice and the takeaway that Rick gives. So we had talked a little bit before, and the thing that you wanted to give as your takeaway teaching moment had to do with shifting away from your own perspective and how it can solve many of the challenges we face. So I want to shift and focus on this now. So now you have the floor on this piece. And, what can you tell us based around that, the conversations we've had already, that's a tangible takeaway that listeners can say, hey, I got this from Rick and I'm going to take it to my team today, or I'm going to utilize this. And even the 7 areas that you focus on, right? I already wrote that down. I'm like, oh, okay, these are my areas I need to focus on. So now I want to give the floor to you on this side to actually provide that tangible takeaway.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. And before we jump completely into the tangible takeaway of perspective and shifting our personal perspective, I want to add a little more to those 7 key areas I was talking about. Those 7 key areas I'm talking about, and the certification I have for coaching is through this organization known as OOLA, OOLA. And essentially it is a formula or a framework to really individually look at your life in those 7 key areas. And for me personally, the reason I chose to go with getting certified through OOLA is as I was going through a sort of rebuilding of my own personal development, I was consuming every kind of personal development you name any of the big names. I was reading their materials. I was going through all of it. And then I came across ULA, which really was this distilled down. Here are the 7 key areas. I'm like, wow, this is like everybody's great information in one spot. And so I started applying it to my own life. And that's where I really noticed, okay, this works. And this is how I'm working it. So now I coach it. And through this coaching process, I also then came to this takeaway, which is this perspective shift, that too often as individuals, because we are so close to what's going on in our life, we are so wrapped up in our day-to-day, either whether it's a relationship, whether it's family, whether it's finances, whether it's work, you name it, whether it's the constant bombardment of news we're getting, that we're consuming, that we can't look away from, but we need to, any of that. If we take a moment to consciously choose to either do kind of the example I use, like a lateral shift, like just step away from a moment of that constant stream you're in and stop to gain some perspective, it makes such a huge difference that you can see not only where have you come from, but if I stay on this constant stream, where is it going to take me versus is that where I want to go? Is this the life I want to live? Being able to shift your perspective then when dealing with other people also helps you, because you start to realize, wait a minute, is what I think is going on here my emotional response, or is it really what this person is trying to convey, do, or say? Is this really who they are, or are they dealing with something else greater and that's causing their behavior to be this way? Maybe it's not me. In any of these scenarios and any of the things going on in your life, if you can step just to the side and reevaluate, look at yourself, look at your life, look at the people around you, and shift that perspective a little bit, it is a game changer. Absolute game changer, in that you have the opportunity now to gain more knowledge. That shift of perspective, back in the day when I was a kid, I lived near a very large river, and we had a boat, and your boater certificate, you had to take this course, and you were taught how to use the bow of the boat aimed at a certain direction, to go where you want to go, and everything else. And I will always remember, they say, even if your visual marker is off by 1 inch, it will change your course dramatically in the outcome of where you'll end up versus where you want to go. And I always think of that when it comes to perspective shift, is that's just that little subtle shift of your perspective can change dramatically how you see the world around you and your life, and then your responses to it. And it's really, really important. And then this will also roll into, and does roll into, when I'm working with corporations. And one of the big issues I see right now, we all see it, we all know it, is this great resignation. We kind of touched on it before. There's even a survey, goodness, I think it came out, what was it? If I remember correctly, I think I wrote it down here. Morning Consultant for Prudential came out about 2 months ago. 46% of full-time employees in the United States are either actively looking or considering looking for a new job. That's huge.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So then, as if I am a corporate leader, if I am in an organization, obviously we know retention's important, that turnover is bad because the amount of money and time it takes to train someone versus keep someone is dramatically different. And so it's an alarm bell. And many people in this study were citing that they're looking for more purpose in their life. They're looking for more work-life balance. The burnout's an issue because they're dealing with people on their team leaving, so now they've got more workload. And so what I say then to those that are in leadership, you have to shift your perspective. It is easy to say this is a spoiled generation we're dealing with. That is easy to say that, everyone's so self-centered now, I can't get anybody to be a team member anymore. Or shift your perspective as to what are they dealing with? What is the current culture of the workforce dealing with and looking at? What have they been exposed to now because they realize they can work from home? You have a lot of leadership saying, it's very important for the culture of the organization that we all come together and see each other face to face. And I'll be the first to tell you, face-to-face time is important, but is there flexibility? Is there a hybrid schedule? Is there a way that you can manage keeping some of your best talent and still allow them to work from home, if that's what they desire, if that's the balance that they need? The important thing is that they listen to them. One of the things that I have actually been told, have heard from leadership in an organization I was doing some work with a couple months back, is that this generation is just all used to getting their participation trophies, and I'm not going to hand out participation trophies and make everyone happy. And the reality is that's very short-sighted. If this person, not of that generation, could have shifted their perspective and realized, if you grew up in an environment where you're always getting participation trophies, those trophies don't mean anything, whether you're a top performer or you're the bottom performer. If everyone's getting it, they know it's not worth anything. So why would you in turn offer a pizza party as a reward for your entire team? Because your top performers go, yay, everyone gets pizza. Well, I'm so glad I busted my butt. And your bottom performers like, yay, everyone got pizza. I know I suck. I need help, So it's one of those things where they have to shift perspective. Leadership has to shift perspective to get an idea as to what makes their current employee group, pool, whatever you want to call it, function, work, motivated, what resonates with them, what are they looking for? And unfortunately, a lot of upper leadership of an older generation is like, well, I never had to do that. We had to buckle down. I get it. I get it. That's your experience, but your current group of people that you have to choose from to hire or retain didn't grow up like that. They aren't dealing with that. And if you're going to not change, then you are not going to retain people. You're not going to be able to hire people because you have to make that adjustment. I've got this, one of my favorite things, going back to our animal stuff. One of our, so many people say this wrong. Darwin said it's survival of the fittest, but it's not survival of the fittest. He said, his actual quote was, "It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change." This is true for companies and organizations and individuals. Adaptation is going to save your butt.
Yeah. I think that both of those are so valuable, that quote and the need for adaptation, right? Especially for some of those leaders who, like you said, they've been in their way. They're used to those jobs with back in the day where it didn't matter what you were doing, but it was a paycheck and it put food on the table for your family. Right. So you did it, right? But we are learning and we are changing. And we, especially through the pandemic, we've learned, guess what? I do my job the same way, if not probably more hours, if you think about it, because I'm not getting distracted by talking with people and that kind of thing. I probably put more hours in being at home. And in the meantime, guess what? I can let the dog out. I can go pick up the kiddo real fast, that flexibility. But the change in perspective is so, so important. So your takeaway today is so valuable because I appreciate that flexibility, but I have colleagues that they don't need that. They want to be in the office. They want to be out of the house. They want to be away from the dog that's pouting to go outside or whatever, So needing to change that perspective. And like you said, going back to the participation trophy, right?
Right.
Some people are okay with that. And then others, everybody's going to have their own and their different opinion. So having that need to, one, change your perspective, which is very hard for people.
It is. And that's where, as a coach, I spend a lot of time supporting my individual clients on that. Because the process for individual personal development and coaching, it is very intimate in the sense of, there's a lot of honesty. There's usually some tears, we really got to get in there. But that's where it's like, I have to work with them to help them take that perspective shift, if even only temporarily, just to get a glance at what it looks like from this angle instead. And then when it comes to the corporate side of it and getting a chance to understand the people that are on those teams that make that organization hum, it's not quite as intimate in the sense that we play some role playing. Sometimes we work with, okay, let's take some perspective shift. If this happened to you as a C-suite person or as a middle management person, and we basically shift some things around to give them perspective as to what that experience would be like that their current team members are going through. So yeah, it is hard. It is very hard because we are creatures of habit. I mean, that's a whole nother interview as you talk about habit loops, how to reconstruct a habit after you take it apart, and all that goes into that, because you can't actually just stop something cold turkey. You have to replace it with something else. It's a whole dynamic when it comes to that part of it. But absolutely, shifting perspective can be hard, but it's not impossible. It's not impossible. And it's really a key element to make leaders better leaders, to make parents better parents, to make individuals be able to go through their life in a more fulfilling way, by being able to shift perspective and understand others in their world to better understand themselves. And that's the other part of it too. I'll tell you what, one of the biggest things when coaching individuals is it's a setup. I work them through the process of understanding others, to shift perspective, to get that sort of knowledge of where this person might be coming from. But then we talk about the person in the mirror, and do they truly understand why that person in the mirror does what they do? And sometimes that's the hardest perspective shift, is to actually look that person in the face and really get a true understanding as to, why do I do what I do? Why do I have that extra glass of wine at night when I know I shouldn't? Why do I get up at 2:00 in the afternoon from my desk and wander around and visit all the candy bowls in the office when I know I shouldn't, any of that. And so that sometimes is the bigger perspective shift that it's the most difficult, is when it's taking that shift to look at yourself.
Oh yeah, I'd be the one in tears if you coached me through
But
this.
they're tears of breakthrough. They're not tears of pain. It's a matter of facing the stuff that sometimes we have. Honestly, the tears usually come from facing the things that we have chosen not to face for many years, that we have to face them to move past them, because those are some of your blockers. When I talk about coaching 101, we talk about blockers and accelerators. And again, this goes back to the ULA program that I work through. And the blockers, it's fear, it's guilt, it's anger, it's self-sabotage, it's laziness, it's envy, it's focus or lack thereof focus. And those items are the things that we start working on, those that usually create the tears, because we've been blocking them we use them as blockers for a reason, because we've never wanted to deal with them, but we have to, so we can get through them and move forward.
How long was that whole that ULA program that you did?
Well, so for me, the process of getting certified, it was a couple of months to go through it all. But when I use it as a coach, it's a 10-week program. So it's 10 weeks, no ifs, ands, or buts. If something comes up, we can skip a week, but it's really important the way everything is stacked and processed across that 10 weeks. And it's one session each week. And then I'm available, of course, for, if something comes up in between, for texting or conversation. But these are intense sessions. It includes videos that they watch beforehand, paperwork they go through beforehand. And we sit down together for an hour and go through that. And it's 10 solid weeks. And then after that, if the client chooses, we do accountability afterwards. So maybe meet every other week then, to keep things accountable moving forward, because it's a process. And I kind of say, it's when you go for personal development and you spend some money on that, investing in yourself on that, it's like going to, the hardware store, any of the big boxes, Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever, and you buy all these really great tools to build this awesome shed in the backyard, or this new house that you want to live in. And you've got someone helping you pick out the tools and teach you how to use them. And you get started on your own. And then like, okay, let me know if you need any help. And then you just say, well, I'll get to it next weekend. And then, you have all the stuff, it's all there. But if you don't use it, it's not going to happen. And it's the same thing with coaching. So the accountability side of it, follow-ups afterwards, are really important to keep you on track. It's 21 days to create a new habit, but that new habit can stop on day 22. What's important, what we don't necessarily recognize in our culture, that it is not just creating the habit, but it's actually making it then part of our routine. And a routine gets established after 90 days of redundancy. So after 90 days of doing something over and over again, the human brain will click on and go, okay, this is a routine. It goes into the basal ganglia, which is the automatic play. You don't even think about it anymore. It's like driving to work. You just do it, and so that becomes in routine. And so then after 90 days, you have more of a higher chance of success of maintaining this new behavior, these new habits that are going to shift and change your life. So that's the really important part of that part of it.
And and the other piece of this too, which is why I wanted to do this whole series focused on consultants and coaches, is, when we're young, we have coaches, right? We have tutors, and then there's this time we hit where we don't. But if you're, like you were talking about sports earlier, if you're a quarterback or if you're on a football team or a basketball team, they get coaches. But then all of us, the kind of like normal plain Janes in the middle, right? We don't have coaches. And that's the problem, is still, and those 7 areas you mentioned, having a coach, having a financial advisor, having all of these buckets, and you have somebody coaching and working you through that. We're in this society of, oh, I can do it. I can figure, right? Going to the hardware store, getting all the tools, and then you don't know what you're doing. It's so important that people have coaches or therapists or financial advisors, all of these things, because we had all this stuff when we were little, like when you're in school, you get a counselor when you're in school that helps you figure out your plan of what you want to do for college. I switched my counselor because I went in as a freshman and I had all my stuff ready to go. I wanted to work with animals. I knew I wanted to go volunteer at the zoo and all of this. And he said, oh, you're too young. You don't have to worry about that. I went, what? So I took all of my stuff. I walked out of his office. I went into the next office and I asked that guy to be my counselor instead. Right. But
that's actually a really good story in the sense, real quick, because it's the same thing in real life. If you have a mentor it's not clicking, get a different mentor. If you have a therapist and it's not clicking, get a different therapist. Sometimes it is a real pain in the ass to do that, but it's so important to have the right mentor, therapist, coach, counselor in your case, because it makes all the difference in the world.
It totally does. And then to have them, right? We had them when we were younger. And then just because I didn't become a professional basketball player, why don't I have them now? So that's the other piece of all of this, is the importance for people to find a coach and a consultant that they connect with, right?
Yeah.
And like you, that has that background, that yes, you've gone through the training and everything to be a coach, but you have that background with just dealing with the fundamentals of animal behavior. And it applies so much to what you're doing with coaching and just working through, teams and people. I can't tell you how often, and including my family, they're like, Kendra, are you doing that animal stuff on us? Like, it's definitely not like some voodoo trick.
It's not a Jedi mind trick.
That's not what I'm doing. Although that is how my stepdaughter does the dishes, because I'm positively reinforced her. But you're bringing that knowledge and the training that you have to be a coach, but that combination is just so, so powerful. I appreciate you coming to the table with that very valuable takeaway as well, because I didn't really, when I read it, I was like, oh, that's going to be a cool takeaway. But then hearing you explain it, it's like, oh shit, like this is even good just like with a spouse, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, why did they say it the way that they said it?
Right.
Did I really need to, be a shithead about the way that, like, what are they going through?
Mm-hmm.
And then hearing you explain the whole thing, I'm like, oh yeah.
Right. And like I said, it is so important. I think your example there on an individual basis is perfect. Whoever we share space with, whether it's a spouse, a roommate, a sibling, a coworker that you are with 5 days a week in the next door cubicle, any of that, you can take a moment to just shift your perspective and go, okay, should I have taken that personally? Is that something else they're going? Is this a normal behavior for them? Or are they just acting out of character? And so instead of responding with fear and anger, maybe I should respond with concern and be curious about what's going on. Why, hey, is everything okay? It changes so much. And then, like I said, too, I think the biggest one is that being able to take perspective and understanding yourself is a huge game changer.
Ooh, I can't even imagine. We'll work on that.
All right. Well, hey, if you want.
Well, I'm so excited that we've talked about this for a while.
That's
I've
true.
talked with you even before we were going to do this specific series that's focused on coaches. So I'm excited that it finally came to fruition.
Yeah,
and
me too.
Yeah, and it finally happened. And speaking of animals, I've had my dog in the studio this whole time. She hasn't made a peep. That's
Yay.
exciting. So before we go, we talked about the value in coaching and consulting, and right, having somebody like you to draw things out that are not necessarily things you're going to draw out of yourself, and the steps to do that and to grow. So I want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to connect with you, to follow up with you, to reach out to you. So what are all of the best ways? You can tell us all of them, but what are the best ways for folks when they hear this and they're like, man, this guy's good. And they want your support. How can they reach you?
Well, you had mentioned at the top that I am a podcast host. I have my own podcast. It's titled We All Have Something. Yeah, because we do, whether it's good or bad or whatever, we all have something. And I go in, the first season has wrapped, and that first season, I really just kind of just talk about all these different things that we have to deal with sometimes, and these challenges that maybe we don't recognize how much they're influencing our life. So yeah, just check. We all have something anywhere you listen to your podcast. I'm going to start recording season 2 here after the holidays, where I'm going to be interviewing a lot of people to get other perspectives and angles and their stories on how they made it through some of the challenges in life. And then, of course, probably the easiest way to find me than everywhere else is on my website, coachrickschwartz.com. Just all one word, coachrickschwartz.com. And you can find all my social media there as well. My YouTube channel, information, testimonials, how to get a hold of me if you want to chat more. I'm always open to free 30-minute conversations just to see if what I do as a coach or a consult fits what your needs are. And then, yeah, if you are a social media junkie as well, just look for Coach Rick Schwartz with an underscore between Coach and Rick and Schwartz. So Coach Rick Schwartz, you can type that in the search. It's bound to come up. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I even started a little TikTok there to get some fun little videos out there. I don't do the dancing and lip syncing. I don't do the dancing and lip syncing. It's just more just fun little 30, 40-second blips of self-care and some thoughts to think about in your day. So try to make it fun.
Awesome. Can you spell your name just so everyone hears it as well? Only because I've known folks that have the same last name, but there's extra or not.
Yes, that's true.
So
well, the first name is very straightforward. R-I-C-K, just as it sounds. And then Schwartz is a standard German spelling, S-C-H-W-A-R-T-Z.
Perfect. Well, Rick, I am so excited that we finally made this happen. And it's great to see, what you have done with, growing your knowledge from animals to people. It's a cool transition. And, I did a similar transition, and now it's so cool to be able to help people.
Yeah.
And I still have that passion for helping animals, but that knowledge base allows you to tackle helping and supporting growing people in such a different way. And like I said in the beginning, that was one of the things that I really wanted to focus on with this particular series was, yes, I want to bring some coaches to the forefront for people to see, hey, if you need to support your company with company culture, here's some coaches and consultants. But I didn't want it to just be, any old coach. There's other ones out there. I wanted to be able to highlight some of the unique ones, and that's you. So,
well, thank you very much. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me. And I love that we finally had a chance to connect here on your podcast. And maybe I'll flip the script on you and get you on my podcast here in a couple months as well.
Ooh, that'd be fun. I'm all over it. That'd be awesome.
Right on.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for listening to another episode of Culture Crush. This one particularly focusing on coaches and their takeaway tips. On all of the series and all of the episodes that we do with this podcast, though, we focus on everything surrounding growing a good company culture. That means growing your people, growing your leaders. In this case, we had a good takeaway of changing your perspective, But everything focusing on good culture and real life experiences, tips, and best practices for creating a healthy work environment. Thanks again, everyone.